Hello and welcome back to the Forts Pro League, where here we have on the left-hand side one of my favorite teams. It's Alexander and Ryabzik, Team 6-7 Aura, playing as the Architect Commander. Every time I see these guys play, it's always a great time. I mean, look at this. Look at the tiny little door here, just perfectly set to aim directly across the way at their opponents. On the right-hand side, it is Clau, Alez, and Nanuki. Nanuki playing under a unusual moniker. But alas, they are playing as Spook. Team Mit Alez, chef. Oh, that shot. What a beautiful shot through the tiny door and everything. Yeah. Well, it is Spook here on the right-hand side for the commander against Team 6-7 Aura on the left with the Architect Commander. And I'm curious to see how this is going to go. The Architect Commander does tend to prefer to keep things a bit slow. There's very reactionary. It is the ultimate in tech switching power, at least as far as commanders go, so they tend to be second in terms of aggression. They let the opponents do whatever they want, and then, well, the Architect players will react to it, build up, and get some particularly well-tailored responses and defenses to whatever the opponents are doing. And in this case, well, frankly, the Spook Commander is very similar. The reason for that is the Spook Commander just doesn't have a whole lot of aggressive power, at least not inherent to the commander choice. Instead, they get an extra knowledge about what the opponents are doing and the ability to steal income. This means that the Spook Commander slows down the opponents and then also lets you, well, have the time and resources to know exactly what to do. So we have what I would expect to be a kind of a slow back and forth between the teams, as everyone just kind of builds carefully, gets their upgrade centers going with their upgraded mines, which we already see, and eventually heavy weapons that just kind of start to scale and spiral out of control, where it's going to come down to a question of whose eco is best and, well, how well they handle the defenses. We might even see some return to senders as we get into late game play here. Now, of course, things can always go sideways, so I'm curious to see how that actually plays out. We do see cannons, and more cannons. The only player going for lasers is Alexander here on the left-hand side. We'll be going for the laser production facility, and I imagine going for plasmas rather than fire beams, because they can. But everyone involved is getting the upgraded economy. We see these two turbines here will eventually be replaced. I do appreciate the yearly shotgun taking out turbines, as well. Ryabzik here is also going shotgun for presumably the same reasons, as shotgun on shotgun violence gets involved. You'll love to see it. I do actually really like this play out of Team Everything here on the right hand side. Red team going with just not proper early game aggression, but just a shotgun, something that can deal damage. This is something I've been playing around with a bit as well. Last stream I was talking about this, where I was going, double or even triple AP sniper just to be annoying at the beginning of the game, and it was working really well. And shotguns are an alternative version of what I was testing out. A little bit more cost because they require well, a specific tech to work, and they've got larger upfront cost, but also they just kind of destroy turbines, as you've seen. Team 6-7 here has been gutted in terms of their turbines. They've lost, what is it, like 2 or 3 turbines apiece, which is not terribly destructive, but is a lot more destructive than pretty much any other option beyond going for swarm missiles, which, I mean, swarm missiles are just kind of an extremely thick investment. But unsurprisingly, we do see heavy weapons starting to come out. We have Ryabzik over here is getting their first standard cannon down, and across the way, we have Clau getting their first cannon down. Nanuki up in the upper fort has not yet developed a heavy weapon, but does looks like Nanuki's going to be delaying this and instead going for buzzsaws and upgrades, which, you know what? Fair enough. Good luck to you. The question is, will Nanuki get their defenses online before the enemy cannons come online? Because if those cannons come online and Nanuki hasn't replaced those buzzsaws, things are going to be a problem. But a huge hit. Not quite enough to break things, but it was close. We see blinking struts in Ryabzik's base and some deformation. Now, the deforming base here is within acceptable metrics for both players here on Team 6-7. The bases are designed with deformation in mind. It is not ideal, but it is perfectly acceptable, and they will remain fully operational. At least for the moment. As Nanuki's running out of ammo on those buzzsaws, and running out of time as well. One side effect of that... Yep, there it is. Nanuki goes down. Did not reconstruct their base in time, and to get the addition of armor, and as such just gets punched in the face at a, well, let's just say it's been about a minute and a half since cannon o'clock, so cannons came out and Nanuki simply wasn't ready for it, was instead betting on Team 6-7 being a little bit more slow. But a massive bit of damage. Clow is penetrated, their armor sundered, and for it they lose a mine and some internal goodies, devices along the way. Really rather unfortunate for Clow here. However, it is worth noting that the cannon shot that took out his teammates was clean enough that it destroyed nothing. At least nothing but his teammates' core. The cannon that was placed is still under construction, all of the energy production still exists, and all of the mines still exist. So Clow, despite having the APM disadvantage, and frankly, he's getting pummeled constantly, he's not in a terrible position game state-wise. He still has a comparable economy, as well as, honestly, he's just kind of got more firepower on the board. It's, well, it's comparable firepower. I would say more firepower, 3 cannons versus 2 cannons and a plasma beam, but the fire beam is coming online, and that changes the math a little bit. As we have a pretty heavy penetrative shot here. Makes it to the core, as we can see structural bracing damaged around the core, but the core itself remains... Oh, that was incredibly close. 3 perfectly aimed shots directly toward Ryabzik's core, is able to use the quick reconstruction facets of the commander to regain the armor, or at least rebuild the armor enough to survive. As, oh no, Alexander running out of money at the last possible second, courtesy of it being stolen away by Clow's commander ability. As we have cannons coming from all over the place, just over-penetrating Alexander's base, taking out turbines and fire beams. This is a back and forth. Honestly, when it comes to defenses, I don't think Clow has quite enough to survive the incoming firepower, whereas Team 6-7 does have enough armor to survive Clow's assaults. However, neither base for Team 6-7 has the ability to survive back-to-back firings. If Clow is able to just fire their shots and then let them reload and fire again, either player, Alexander or Ryabzik, are just going to fall here. That is up to 4 cannons coming out of Clow, which is, at this point, notably more firepower than Team 6-7 combined. I mean... The Russian team here, Team 6-7, they have 2 fire beams, a plasma beam, and 2 cannons. That just is not the same caliber of firepower as 4 cannons on the board. Especially if any of them get hit by... especially if any of them hit an energy shield and get reflected back into their own base. Like, that's This one's rough. We saw the volley earlier where Ryabzik, despite the dense armor, just 3 cannon shells directly in the same spot, nearly eliminated his core. This is a nice back and forth. That EMP's got to carry some heavy weight to delay Clow enough to actually permit the Russians to get some decent damage here. Whereas Clow on the right-hand side is aiming for door snipes more than anything else, and this, I think, is actually a decent idea. The reason for that is constantly firing your cannons, while nice, is expensive, and also makes them predictable, vulnerable to door snipes and such. It's kind of difficult to do when you're getting EMP'd. But if he holds off his shots just enough, he can blast fire his cannons at Team 6-7's opened doors. And in doing so, gets a pretty free shots. As we see there, Ryabzik almost lost everything to a door snipe. But in exchange, Clow lost half of his cannons to a door snipe. An extremely well-aimed shot from Ryabzik leaves Clow down to 2 cannons, and with it, at the firepower disadvantage. As once again, Alexander's armor is penetrated and loses another fire beam for it. A huge hit. Clow's armor too is penetrated and loses a couple more mines for it. That's not the kind of damage he wants to be taking. For the record, no one wants to take any damage, but that is as the worst kind of damage. As now, Ryabzik with 3 cannons is going to just out firepower Clow on his own. And that's before even considering Alexander's fire beam plasma beam setup here. And there it is. Clow just lost the last of his weapons, bringing him down to no firepower. At this point, he's going to have to do something crazy in order to club his way back in this game. He does have a cannon under construction in the upper fort, which I think is the right call, but he's going to need to do something between now and that cannon coming online, because things are going to escalate. Team 6-7, the Russians here, definitely understand that there's no more firepower coming their way, or at least nothing incredibly destructive, and with that safety comes the ability to simply lay on the firepower, to just pour it on them. And I think that's what we're going to see here. Oh, it's just rampant firepower and damage output. They correctly discovered that there was a cannon up here, and they're trying to remove it, as this cannon is Clow's last hope to recovering in this game. I like the addition of the workshop here. A transition to something like mortars, a surprise mortar switch, I think would be a great way for Clow to come back in this game, as frankly Team 6-7 is just not prepared for such things. A single volley of heavy mortars, or perhaps even a double volley of heavy mortars, could just ruin any of the bases here for Team 6-7. But there's a lot of firepower heading to Clow's core, and that's it. Clow goes down, and Team 6-7 wins round 1 in this best of 3. Alright, welcome to round 2, ladies and gentlemen, as the sides have been swapped. As here we have on the left-hand side, it is Team Mit Alles Chef, that is Team Everything, Nanuki in the lower fort, and Clow Alles in the top fort. They're playing as the Architect Commander, grabbing the commander choice in their opponents. On the other side, it is Team 6-7 Aura, Ryabzik in the lower fort, Alexander in the upper fort. They're now playing as the Overdrive Commander, after becoming victorious in the previous round. We'll get to see how this round turns out. Now, I do want to say that again we are playing with something akin to generalistic commanders. We have Architect here on the left, which is the quintessential, the best tech switching commander on the board. Whereas on the right side we have Overdrive, which is a purely economic commander, but specializes in upgrades, which is, I guess, as purely economic as you can get, but lacking any kind of bonuses to weaponry or such, or even tech production or anything like that. It is just going to be another round where things I can realistically expect to take it slow. No one's looking to get aggressive here. We're not playing with Firebird, Warthog, or really anything that's planning on getting weapons at a specific time and removing the opponents. Both of these teams are set for the long game, with slightly different variations in how they do so. Now, if you guys like this kind of content, make sure to hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button, and let me know which of your teams is the favorite, because frankly, we've had a fair few new teams here, and I want to see from you guys which of them from the Forts Pro League are your favorites as we go into it. Now back to this match, things are progressing as I would expect them to. Everyone involved is getting an upgrade center, and we can already see upgraded mines happening. It is worth noting that Alexander has developed the armory tech. Because they are playing as Overdrive, this is a strictly unnecessary tech that need not be placed. So if it is placed, it is because they want it. Alexander wants to have this weapon here, and you know what? I approve, because flak and shotguns in general are quite the good time. Same thing here with Ryabzik with their own armory. I mentioned it before, but I like what they did with the shotguns, just getting involved. We do hear an AP sniper plinking away at Ryabzik's turbine. If there was multiple AP snipers, you could destroy that quite quickly, but we're not going to see multiple AP snipers because it is only one coming out from Plow. This AP sniper is the keep the honesty check. It's the I know you're going to get a sniper or other things, and I'm just going to plink away at it and make you suffer for daring to construct a sniper. However, the shotgun comes out, and with it, Nanuki loses a pair of turbines and is likely to lose more if the defenses do not come online in time. Defenses do come online in time. The shotgun now hunts the sniper, but the sniper wins that engagement, or at least that trade, assuming the sniper fires back, which is not a good assumption at this point. Either way, we're not seeing any real aggression here, so much as just plinking away at each other with various early game and harassment style weapons. Upgraded turbines for Ryabzik. I like what I'm seeing here, Nanuki with the mortar array. It's worth noting that Team 6-7 recognizes the mortars are here and are building anti-air trenches for it. I like the mortar play. I've seen this with a fair few of the FPL matches of late. The basic idea is that they intend the mortars to cause not quite a little bit more than psychological damage, where the mortars themselves are capable of dealing damage and if unchecked will deal damage, but the real damage from these mortars doesn't come from the mortars themselves, but from the reaction of the opponents. If Team Everything here on the left can convince their opponents on the right to overreact, then both of the players on the right side here, both of the Russian players, will be far, far behind the build curve. Whereas Clow is already placing a heavy weapon, specifically the plasma beam. Given the just perfect amount of pressure coming in from Team Everything, if they're able to convince the Russians to overreact to this, build a whole mess load of gunners and entrenchments and similar aggressive weapons like AP snipers and shotguns, then suddenly their timings for getting to heavy weapons are very, very slow. And as such, well, they're going to be way behind Clow here, and Clow's just going to be able to come in and sweep them up with overwhelming firepower. And I think that's what we're going to see here. Now, it is worth noting that Alexander up top already has a cannon. So while an extreme overinvestment isn't going to happen, there's certainly some slowness occurring due to these mortars coming in. We don't see any heavy weapons out of Ryabzik. Alexander only has a single cannon. However, the mortars are also largely unchecked. I think we may have a bit of an under-investment from Alexander and potentially over-investment from Ryabzik. And there's the damage, but no, there's no follow-up here from team everything here on the left. The cannon is left to construct of its own. But look at this, there are now 2 plasmas ready to go for Cloud. All Cloud needs is enough energy and storage to fire them both. And I think that's what we're going to see. Yeah, going directly to the cannon here. He takes it. Alexander loses the cannon, doesn't have the armor to defend against these plasmas. The heavy weapon's just enough to punch through. But now look at this. Team 6-7 has no active heavy weapons. Sure, only one player on the blue team has active heavy weapons. But that's still more damage output than the rest of their opponents combined, which is, you know, the way that they intend this to go. One player sacrifices themselves so that the other player can get out the heavy weapons. And look at that! We do see the smoke launcher coming in an effort to block all of those plasma shots. But the plasmas get through anyways, destroying the smoke launcher. And now Alexander's just kind of struggling to get enough cash to actually afford heavy weapons. While on the other hand, Ryabjik has heavy weapons placed, but doesn't have any completed. And is about to get slammed by more plasmas and even a howitzer at this point. Look at this. Nanuki's howitzer is coming online at the same time as Ryabjik's cannon is coming online. I like the double sniper play from Ryabjik. Ryabjik does that a lot, and it makes me happy every time I see it. Looks like Clow is focusing on Alexander with the energy weaponry. We'll see if Nanuki... Yes. Double howitzer coming from Nanuki. Ryabjik just barely hanging on. Not enough stability tech to maintain the defenses there, or to maintain the base structure there, but just enough to keep it from total collapse, but only just barely. As we see, those mortars are still coming in and dealing damage after all of this time, which is just hilarious to me. I always love when mortars get involved. They do things like this. They make games like this where things get wild. Do we see the follow? There is... Ryabjik doesn't have the double shot available to take out both howitzers, so one of them will land and that will sunder Ryabjik's armor, leaving him vulnerable to all kinds of things, such as, but not limited to, fire beams and destruction. And just like that, Ryabjik goes down to some crumbling of the forts. Too much stability loss. It all comes crumbling down, snapping the core alongside the rest of the base. As now Alexander stands alone against a base with still active mortars, an array of lasers. And, well, it's going to take a moment, but Nanuki will eventually retask those howitzers to aim upwards, as we see that happening right now. The question is, how long will Alexander last under this withering firepower, and will it be long enough for Alexander's own cannons to come online? Because despite all of this, the blue team here on the left-hand side has been basically living off of a risk. Look, we see single doors on fire beams. These plasmas were just had their doors added in. A single cannon can do work here, not just destroying fire beams, but we see big doors that can take out and easily door snipe the plasmas. We have exposed shotguns and, well, everything else. Frankly, Clow's base is just not the most defended thing on the board. Even here we see more exposed weapons being added in. This has been the case for Clow since the start, and this is by design. One of the benefits of having a teammate go mortars is that they take all the aggro, and therefore Clow is able to get greedy, get their weapons online, and it may not matter. Alexander just lost most of their mines and had the other half disconnected The damage is critical. An attempt at taking out Nanuki's howitzer, which, if that had landed and destroyed the howitzer, would have destroyed Nanuki in their entirety. But the howitzers have been retasked, and Alexander's time is running out, as here comes the massive firepower, and out goes Alexander's core. And we're off to round 3, the decider match between these two teams, and what has been an absolutely wonderful back and forth, as here we have on the left-hand side, it is Team 6-7. Alexander and Ryabzik are playing as the Spook Commander once again. They're looking to get themselves victory in this best of 3 against their opponents. On the right-hand side, it is Team Mitales, Clow and Nanuki, who are now playing as the Overdrive Commander. I am once again expecting to see some fairly late game plays here with more economic focus. It is worth noting that both of these commanders are generalist in nature, and we have seen time and again the Overdrive teams go for suddenly early gameplay, like, oh yes, all of these mortars, and it's often nukes, like mortars and nukes. The benefit of having the boosted upgrade speed means you can bring out those upgraded weapons pretty quick. I expect that not to be the case here, especially given that 6-7 Aura, here on the left-hand side, are playing as a Spook Commander. They too have no particular desire to get aggressive. And with it, I think we're going to see some more slugfest, and that makes me happy. I like the slugfest matches. What do you guys think? Of all the matches that we've had, do you guys prefer the slugfest matches, the scrappy matches? Which ones are your favorite? I want to hear from you guys as we continue on with Season 7 here in the Forts Pro League. Shout out to everyone who's leaning their bases backwards. It's always a toss-up. Who gets to lean their base backwards the most? I think in this case, Nanuki takes the most lean. More slanting means more stability for the forts. This is something we don't often talk about, but the idea here is that by pulling the core backwards, leaning it backwards as we call it, it enables the weight from the core to be shifted off of these front nodes and towards the rear nodes. And with less weight on the front nodes, you can now put more weight on the front nodes from armor. Basically, it lets you get more armor in front because you no longer have to worry about the core being directly over those positions. This is what happens here. Yes, I know there's no core down here, but that's just because they don't need it. Triangles are the strongest shape, and here we see them being used to their full advantage. This is the same thing on the other side, but Nanuki's managed to get their core over a little bit further, with fundamentally the same base design. We even have the sniper slightly elevated for easier door usage. With the sniper at this angle, the hitbox makes it such that it can fire through the tiny door a little bit easier. You see that fairly often these days. Which is a nice little trick. Kind of APM intensive for my tastes, but it works. Usually if I go snipers, I just like put them in the woods bracing and get them going real quick. Slam the opponent's turbines, or even mines. I got someone's mines the other day. They had a base like this, and they didn't put enough wood in front of it, and I managed to use triple AP sniper to take out an entire mine, and that made me so happy. They were mad. They were so mad. It was satisfying. But that is my own play, as here we're talking about Team 6-7 Aura, who's managed to get both tech structures, both heavy weapon structures online, and weapons placed by 4:30 on the clock. Cannon o'clock, or at least the earliest possible cannons, come out at around this time, so we are not going to be at the fastest possible cannons, so they'll be at a more standard timing, where standard involves getting upgrades first and then cannons. On the other side, we have Team Everything, going for a similar tactic. Clow with the same plasma beam fire beam placed, whereas Nanuki doesn't quite have a weapon placed just yet, but is going for a howitzer. You do expect a mild delay on the howitzer placement, given, well, howitzers are more expensive. A little bit more delay than I would have expected, so something has gone awry. I think it likely had something to do with these machine gunners and some fear of potential mortars coming in out of nowhere from Ryabzik. Alas, no mortars were played, and so the howitzer was delayed for no reason in particular beyond fear. The joys of scouting. But a second howitzer is placed. So we're going to see double. Are we going to see? Is this man seriously going for triple howitzer? You cannot do triple howitzer before reinforcing your armor here, dude. You're going to get cannoned. You can't be doing this. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Either way, the first fire beams are coming online for Alexander, and the doors are opening. So I expect to see. Fire beam based activities here momentarily. The other side, Cloud 2 has fire beams and plasma available. At this point, everyone's just kind of sitting on their weapons. The first cannon coming online for Ryabzik, but no one has fired yet. It is now 6:30 on the clock, which is about the time when weapons start being fired, typically in a match where everyone has gone for upgrades and economy first. The EMP still exists for Clow, as I believe it should, given the reliance on energy weapons. Still, no one has deemed it necessary to fire just yet. Typically, both players or both teams will just kind of sit back and not fire until they feel confident they can absolutely eliminate an entire fort in an alpha strike. But then usually it fails like this. The fire beam gets caught, and then it's like, oh, we're firing now, and now suddenly everyone's going to open fire all at once. Which actually hasn't happened yet. Okay. Team 6-7 has they're content to just let it go, to let it ride out. They're getting all their cannons online, waiting until the third cannon comes online. So we have 3 cannons for Ryabzik and 2 fire beams. At this point, that's enough damage. They need to be firing. It's now 7:45 on the clock, and I believe we're about to see the Alpha Strike heading directly toward Nanuki, who has added extra armor, but that is not enough armor. If those cannons are true... Nope, 1 cannon goes a little low, instead leaving just enough armor for Nanuki to survive at 77% of their core. That was close, that was very close. And Nanuki needs to do something about that to prevent it from happening again. As the first fire beam shot comes out from Cloud, taking out a small weapon, but nothing of true importance. But now it is Nanuki's turn to fire back. But there's a chunky amount of anti-air on the board. Team 6-7 uses a single shotgun and skeets both of them out of the air. That is not the world you want to live in if you are Team Everything. Good job for Team 6-7 keeping their skies cleaned. As more cannons come through, it looks like they're aiming for the weapons platform this time. But the weapons platform, at least the position they fired upon, is empty. With no damage, no target inside to damage. One howitzer shell makes it across, leaving a cannon exposed, but there's no follow-up shot beyond an AP sniper, and that will not be enough to take it out before the armor comes back online. Some wonderful sniping from Nanuki. Are they able to finish off this fire beam? No, not quite. As we are sitting into a slugfest where everyone's got enough firepower to be a threat, but no one's got enough firepower to end the game outright. As both teams are going to be working their way, slowly firing upon each other, trying to slow each other down, but both of them also focusing more on building up their own firepower than they are at destroying the opponents. At this stage, we have players scaling upwards, trying to reach a breakpoint where they can alpha strike a single fort out of the game. Here we see Clow on the right-hand side developing a swarm missile and the portal nuke positions. We could expect to see some portal nukes coming around. Whereas Ryabzik is just building a stack of cannons, both of which notoriously effective for breaking forts. Does this howitzer make it? It does not. Armor penetrated, Alexander loses a fire beam. A single fire beam does not greatly impact the game. It's worth noting that Alexander at this point has lost both and all of their fire beams, as Alexander has now shifted more towards a defensive and support role. To be clear, Alexander was always playing the support role, but now no longer has fire beams to do so. Is now relying almost exclusively on smoke throwers, smoke launchers, for the supporting activities. And we can see why, as it blocks the fire beam and the plasmas in general. All in all, Alexander need not deal game-ending damage if he prevents game-ending damage from happening. It's a huge hit. The doors were not reconstructed. Ryabzik takes a massive damage, just a cannon directly through the front, taking the tiny door and the cannon with it. That actually does a huge amount of damage. Not only did it destroy a cannon, or multiple cannons, 3 cannons it looked like, but it deformed the base to a point where I'm reasonably certain Ryabzik just cannot place cannons back there. Is that 2 cannons or 3 cannons? I think that I'll have to check back on the replay to see. Either way, that's a huge amount of damage. Ryabzik's in trouble. In fact, all of Team 6-7 is in trouble. Just getting, at this point, outscaled by Team Everything. The howitzers have not been able to do much. They've landed a couple hits and they've gotten some good damage in when they landed, which is typical howitzer behavior. But like most howitzer rounds, it just doesn't happen very often. The first nuke launches from the portal is completely shut down by Alexander's frankly absurd amount of anti-air. You know, you can never have too much anti-air, and this is why, because things like random nukes and howitzers will happen. And, well, you don't want to be hit by it. The sandbag defense from Nanuki is wonderfully effective. The nuke actually lands, leaving core exposed. Oh. Holy smokes, talk about a close one. So we have damage splashing up and down Team 6-7's forts. Quite literally from above, from every side. It's a lot. Alexander actually gets directly hit by the plasma beam, but does not explode. His core knocked down to 38%. As here comes another volley, another round. Oh no, out of energy. Cloud's energy is sapped from his batteries, courtesy of Team 6-7's Spook Commander. As we have more and more damage flying out from both teams, in fact. The nuke, it makes it again. Oh, that's just painful. Oh my. As we're right back into the slugfest, as Ryabzik manages to reconstruct at least one of his lost cannons, sending all of his cannons into the doors of Nanuki. doing a hefty chunk of metal-based repair cost, but isn't enough to actually break anything. Which, at this point, Team 6-7 needs to break something or they are going to get pummeled down. Both players from Team Everything here on the right-hand side are scaling up their weapons. There's going to come a time when Team 6-7 simply cannot tank the hits anymore. We aren't there yet, but we are getting a huge hit. A plasma from Alexander slices off the bottom of Cloud's base, and with it, Cloud loses several weapons. That'll slow down the damage output for quite some time. But honestly, it's Nanuki doing most of the DPS here, as Rabzik is once again penetrated on both sides, top and bottom, losing a mine and a cannon in the process. His foundations are burning as we have lasers just slicing through his bottom half. And now buzzsaws are coming to potentially end the game. If anything more hits that foundation node, it could just be it for Ryabzik. And if Ryabzik goes down, so it's another beautiful shell. Is that it? Ryabzik down to 51%, losing all but one of his last remaining cannons. Another massive laser shell down to 42% and dropping as the final laser slices him off at the knees and he comes crumbling down. And now all weapons retasked to Alexander, who's going to do their best to defend against it, but there's just not quite enough anti-air to stop the howitzers, as now all these laser beams are going to focus on known weak spots in Alexander's base, slicing off the last bit of weapon platform. Alexander has no more offensive weapons, though they did go out with a bang, sweeping across Cloud's fort and taking out components and anti-air alike. But there's just not enough for Alexander, as I think we're about to see Team 6-7 get destroyed here by the sheer quantity of firepower bearing down upon them. Look at those plasmas, just shot after shot after shot. Even the mortars are still coming into play. I love the addition of the mortars. They're just such a nice little bit of extra pressure. And they can deal so much damage when left unchecked. And well, they haven't been unchecked, but they've been sneaking their hits in. And boy, have they been sneaking their hits in. Just keeping things damaged, keeping things broken for the next rounds to come on through, as here comes the nuke. A huge hit. And where's that laser follow-up? Well, there's the mortar follow-up. As here we see Alexander just doesn't have the money to repair everything. And now with the cannons and mortars taking out the mines, Alexander definitely doesn't have the money for things. I believe, yeah, those lasers are going to attempt to take out the... Look at that. Just when he thought he had hope, it all comes down as Alexander falls. And with it, bringing Team Mit Chef victory in this best of 3. I hope you guys have enjoyed, because I certainly have, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in the next video.